So, Mark, Rangers today announced obviously the re-loan signing of Oscar Cortes with an obligation to buy. Sensible business for the club. The boys showed what he had before he got injured, albeit it was only 4 or 5 games, but sensible business for the club.
I think so. I think that I think it was 7 games. The 7 games that we seen him in, I think he definitely looked apart. He looked better than what we had. He looked like something different. So I think it's good business. I think that the only stipulation probably was when we if we were taking him on another loan, it was an obligation rather than an option. I don't think they would have let us kind of wriggle out of it. I think that's probably the only reason we got him. I got him for another loan period. I dare say that come the end of that loan period, if he's been absolutely honking, there might be ways of getting out of it. But I think as it stands, I think that was the only way they were going to give us another year's loan. So for all in all, great business. I think boys got hundreds of potential. He's in that kind of new recruitment bracket that we're trying to get into. So yeah, I'm very happy with it. I'm very happy with it. I think the boys definitely got lots of potential.
No, it's a no-brainer, Craig, isn't it? I mean, he's only 20. He obviously had that bad injury, and we've spoke how many times over the years about, signing players with injury records, etc., etc. But it was a freak injury. He's only 20. His body's going to heal, and from what we've seen, like Mark says, I think he's a cracking player.
Yeah, if we were to base our signing policy on players that never get injured, we'd have like Tavern, but Butland. That'd be our team next season. We wouldn't have anyone else. I think everyone and the dog got injured last season. Yeah, for me, it's a no-brainer as well. When I saw it this morning, certainly perked my day up. I get the impression that the manager, if he could have, would have signed him permanently this summer anyway. But this is a good bit of business, similar to Diamande, where we can sort of get him in on loan and offset the cost to next season, because the hope will be next season the manager won't be bringing in 8, 9, 10 players like he will this season, and the money at the minute is better spent elsewhere. And get the boy in, obligation to buy. I've seen people online are sort of going off the fact that he's only played so many games. That's not his fault. Obviously, the club would have scouted him beforehand, and the club and Clement and Coppen will be very confident in what he can do. And for me, it's the sort of thing we need to be a bit more clever with the transfer market. Rather than splurging out money straight away, look at these sort of loan with the option or an obligation to buy.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
Just also on that, I think that the good bit of business is that we're actually no forking out cash up front from. So that kind of, if you look at that kind of the 3.5 million, 4 million that we don't need to spend this summer, so that could go in somebody else as well. So for me, it's a good bit of business, definitely.
I mean, that was going to be the point I was going to make, actually, Mark. I mean, Rangers statement, small statement as it is, Rangers Football Club are delighted to announce Oscar Cortes has signed a 1-year loan deal from French side RC Lens with an obligation to buy in the summer of 2025. The 20-year-old winger will then put pen to paper on a 4-year contract at Ibrox through to 2029. The Colombian international joined up with Rangers in January and immediately impressed boss Clement. And the supporters, Cortes made 7, correct, Mark, 7 appearances, scoring once in a 5-0 defeat of Hearts in February before suffering an injury in the 2-1 win at Kilmarnock on February the 28th. So, I mean, like you say, Mark, it's when you were talking about the obligation to buy, it's going to be a 4-year deal for a 20-year-old Colombian who is going to have plenty of resale value.
I think so. I mean, obviously we're not wanting to put the horse before the carriage, but it does look like a decent player. He looks like he's definitely got a bit about him. To say, I know it was only 7 games, but it looked as if he had a bit about him, definitely. So that, and if you look at that, so that's going to be 4 year. Is this year's loan and another half a year's loan as well. So that'll be 5.5 years. The boy would have been here. That's mental. But yeah, listen, you can only go on what you see, and what you see, what we've all seen from the boy seems to be very, very positive.
It does, absolutely. And Craig, he's the type of player I think that the manager needs and wants. He's an old-fashioned out-and-out winger. Obviously, like, he likes to cut inside and take a shot, but I think you've seen for the last kind of 2-3 months of that season that the manager, that's the way that he wanted to play. He wanted to play with wingers, and we didn't really have anybody to suit that position, and that's certainly what Cortes will bring.
Yeah, he's very direct. Got quite a bit of pace. Direct likes to go inside or outside. We'll have the option as well of playing right or left. I think he's pretty comfortable on both wings if we want to change things up. Yeah, I'm really excited, and I think, like you say, the manager, you could tell when he brought him in. Obviously, he had Seaman, McCausland. He wanted to play with wingers. He wants to play with fast, dynamic wingers. Couldn't obviously do that towards the end of the season, which really hampered his plans. But I think the two that we've got in, and what I would be interested to see, whether it be him and Yilmaz or him and Yefti, would be how they link up, rather than having sort of slow plodding players on the left side. We're going to have two, potentially three, quite dynamic players, and it's getting me all tingly.
Well, yeah. Well, look, that's Cortez in the door, Mark. There has been rumblings and rumours and chat and talk circulating one Abdallah Sima possibly coming back in from Brighton. Just quickly on that, is that a deal that you think financially Rangers can do? And the second question, which I think is obvious to everybody watching and all of us on here, is it a deal if we can do that Rangers should do?
I think 100%. Well, to answer your second question first, I think it's a deal that we definitely should bite the hand off you for. I think that he's shown over a season, albeit a couple of wee injuries in there, but great eye for goal. Brings a lot to the team, whether it be even through the middle or wide. So I think if you can do it, yes. I think that probably financial wise, it might be a big strain. It might just be a bridge too far. Would I like to see it? Yes, 100%. Depends on what kind of money they're looking for, really. I don't think we're going to have massive amounts of money to spend this summer. I think that we need to be clever in how we bring people in, how we recruit. I think we've already seen that with the deal that we've just spoke about. We're having to box a wee bit clever. Get players in, try not to fork out too much up front and stuff like that. Loans with an obligation, loans with an option to buy as well. I think's massive for us. Don't know. The talk is 8 million ish there or thereabouts in that ballpark figure. Can we afford to pay that? I don't think so, given the amount of players that we're going to need to bring in. So bridge too far, I think, but I would very much like it to happen.
Yeah. However, if I could just, I don't want to say play devil's advocate, Craig. However, he's been out injured for a while, and it's been a couple of different niggling injuries that Sima has picked up. So if we were getting him for free, for example, I would imagine that every single person, 100% of people would sit and go, no, take him. Yep, 100%. But like Mark says, if it's going to have to be between the kind of 6 to 9 million mark, is that something that you would feel comfortable paying for a player who's undoubtedly quality? You know, one of our top goal scorers, considering he was out for so long injured. But is that somebody who you would feel totally comfortable paying for with the sort of injury track record that we've seen in just a season?
Not for that price. I think if you're buying someone for the 6 to 8 million, you need someone that's gonna, and not to put Seema down, but who's gonna basically come in and be the player in that team. If we're spending that much money, you want someone to come in and be the main man, which I don't think Seema would necessarily be. For me, I think a key thing is that I believe he's out of contract next summer at Brighton. There might be a year's option with them, but I'm pretty certain he's out of contract in summer 2025. So if he, from what I gather, he seems quite happy and seemed quite happy at Rangers. So whether there's some negotiation that can happen between him, club, and Rangers and Brighton, to sort of look at, do they look at a smaller deal because he's going to be out of contract, and ultimately if he goes back to Brighton, someone might come in and bid 6 to 8 million for him, great. But if he's going to go back to Brighton and sit on their bench, they're not going to get much out of him in it, and then he's going to leave in a year. So for Brighton, for Rangers, and for him, it might be the best case scenario that a cut price deal might be able to be done, and then he comes back to Rangers, where obviously the fans seem to adore him last season. He seems quite happy, and Brighton at least gets something for him rather than potentially losing him in a year.
See, Mark, I slightly disagree with Craig there in terms of Sima coming in and being the main man. I think he would probably come in and be one of the mainstays and one of the main players. The only point I was making was simply the injury record that he seems to have just in the last season. I haven't checked back over previous seasons to see if he's ever been out injured. It might just be a case of he got the Rangers bug and not in a good way in terms of injuries. But it was just when you said there, when you mentioned there the kind of 8 million, whether we could, because like Craig says, he's only got a year left in his deal, whether we could get him for slightly less than that, I would just be slightly hesitant. Although I'm with you, I'd want him in the door. I would just be slightly hesitant at forking out a lot of money for a guy who's spent half the season injured.
Yeah, I think that's probably where we are as a club. The fact that we've been absolutely terrorised by injuries over the last couple of years, and I think all of us have got that PTSD that we don't want to bring somebody in that's going to be injury prone or going to miss large parts of it, especially if you're going to pay some massive amounts of money. So I see that as well, but I think that we cannot use the fact that players are injured and have been injured to sway what we're thinking. Rather
Depending
not bring
on
them
the
in.
amount of injuries I've had,
Yeah,
Mark,
yeah,
though.
yeah.
You
Oh,
can't
well, yeah.
bring you can't bring another Ryan Jack in.
No, no. And to be fair, I'm hoping that it's kind of you're hoping that it's a mixture of bad luck, and probably our medical department and recovery. So I think that hopefully that's going to be sorted this season. I think there's going to be moves made with the medical department, with the sports science department. I'm led to believe so. That might be a step in the right direction when it comes to injuries and injury prone players and stuff like that. But it really is your Donald Duck. I know that we're not wanting to sign players that are injured all the time, but all you've got to do is look at Hollander. Hollander left and's never been injured since. And so uh, you just do not know. But if it's only wee niggly injuries, then you can live with that. I think that players at the top of a sport, whether it be any sort of a sport professional, they're putting their body through to the limit, day in day out, whether it be training, whether it be playing professional games, whether it be so. It's an occupational hazard. It's like a joiner hitting his thumb with a hammer. It's going to happen at some point. Do you know what I mean? So that's kind of the way you should look at it. I think that we need to maybe take away this PTSD of every player that we've ever signed has been injured and been injured for years. Hopefully, moving forward, that's not going to be the case. But I do get your point that you don't want to. Personally, I wouldn't want to spend 8 million on a player that's possibly going to be injured. But you just don't know, as I said, and that's the kind of gamble you take. This is why we have clubs have insurance. So I
Yeah,
don't know,
and
but
I
I think
genuinely don't see Rangers spending £8 million on anybody, to be honest. But
I can't see it. I think that we will probably, and I think we do need maybe a couple of marquee signings, but I think probably your marquee signings are going to be like 5 million. I
aye.
think that's providing we get people out the door and money in. I don't think that's going to be just if everything stayed, we don't lose another player just now as it stands. I don't think we'll be spending a lot of cash at all. I think we need to move players out to bring
Mhm.
players in, and I think that's kind of what they're trying to do at the moment. This player trading model that they've been talking about for God knows how long. Hopefully, that's going to try and start to kick into gear a wee bit for us.
Listen, we could spend another hour and a half talking about the player training model and the board and all that, but I'm not even going to delve into that. Just quickly, Craig, I want your thoughts on, because we discussed this in the members show on Thursday night. Leon Balogun obviously signing a new year 1 year deal, if I can get my words out properly. And the overwhelming consensus I've seen online and the overwhelming consensus on the members show was brilliant, great bit of business. He's not necessarily coming in to be first choice, but he's a guy with plenty of experience. He's a guy who absolutely loves the club, and he's a guy who's phenomenal in the dressing room as well. And he also wants to win. He's a winner, which is something that we've severely lacked.
Yeah, sorry. I obviously came up on Saturday that obviously he'd signed the new deal on the back of the other players leaving. I don't know. I've still been quite 50-50 of it since Saturday, and I think it's more the fact that if he's coming in to be fourth choice, play certain games when we need to rest players and play certain cup games, he's not on a lot of money, then great. if it ends up being that he's playing 25 to 30 games in the season, then we're just in that same cycle of bringing someone back. So I think the proof will be in the pudding in what actually happens with Balogun. For me, like I say, if he's coming in as fourth choice to support new players coming in, then fantastic for another year. But I don't want it to be a situation where we're having to rely on him because another player that's had his injury problems and famously can't play 3 games a week. Obviously, he only plays certain games. I think if the intent is correct, then great. But I'll just reserve judgment for a little while until we see what the outcome is.
Do you go along with that, Mark? That's the first time I've actually heard somebody say they were 50-50 about Balogun.
Listen, I think I'm on record as saying I couldn't care less how much we're playing players or what the budget is or how much we're spending, what's our monthly or yearly salary budget. No, I don't pay their wages. I couldn't really care less. As long as we can afford it, I couldn't care whether he's making 30 grand or 4 grand. So for me, I think it's a decent bit of business. I dare say he's not going to win great amounts of money, saying that, but I don't know. I think that you need somebody that's probably, because I think looking at our trading model, going back to that, we're looking to bring in a lot of young players, a lot of players between the ages of 20 and 25. So I think that we need some older heads. We've just lost an awful lot of older statesmen, and I think that you need a couple older guys. And I think that Balogun's one of these players that's very good with the younger players, always talking to them, always helping them out and stuff like that. So I think even for the point of kind of being that father figure in the dressing room, I think's massive. To me, no, I think he's done enough last season. Although he was injured a couple of times, but he's done enough last season for me to say another year's absolutely fine as far as I'm concerned.